Maya never expected a wrong cruise ticket to change her life. What was meant to be a simple work trip turned into an unexpected journey aboard Luca Moretti's private yacht. A self-made billionaire, Luca never imagined someone like Maya would cross his path. What started as a mistake quickly became the beginning of a life-changing connection neither could have predicted. Maya had always dreamed of adventure. Growing up in a small town, her world had been limited to the pages of travel magazines, the glossy images of exotic places she had never visited. Her mother, a strong and independent woman, had always encouraged her to follow her dreams, but reality had other plans. With a modest income and a life dictated by responsibility, Maya's dreams had been pushed aside in favor of practicality. Now, years later, Maya had carved out a niche for herself as a travel blogger, documenting her modest trips across the globe. But no matter how many sponsored posts she secured, no matter how many brands she worked with, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stuck in a cycle of working endlessly for scraps, chasing a dream that always seemed just out of reach. Her apartment was small, cluttered with half-finished projects and old suitcases. The walls felt like they were closing in, and Maya's heart longed for more. But what more could she have? What did she deserve? She had sacrificed everything for her career, even the fleeting relationships she'd tried to build. And though she had loved once, really loved, with her whole heart, it had ended in heartbreak. Ben had been the one, the man she thought she would spend her life with. They met in college, young and full of ambition. He promised her the world, told her they'd travel together, see everything the world had to offer. But as life went on, Ben's dreams grew bigger, while Maya's seemed to shrink. When he left for a job opportunity across the globe, Maya was left behind, clinging to the idea that one day he would come back. But he didn't. Ben's departure left her with more than just a broken heart. It left her with a fear of being left behind, of giving too much and getting nothing in return. And so, Maya buried herself in her work, vowing never to let her heart wander again. She didn't need anyone else. She had her job, her dreams, just not the life she once imagined. But fate had other plans. The day started like any other, with Maya sipping her lukewarm coffee at her tiny desk, typing away at her laptop, and juggling emails for her travel blog. The cruise she had booked, a modest, budget-friendly excursion to the Mediterranean, was supposed to be just another work trip, another opportunity to capture stunning photos and write content. She had a plan, a path she knew well. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. But then, everything changed. When Maya arrived at the port, there was an unexpected shift in the air. She had received her ticket confirmation, but upon boarding the cruise ship, something felt off. The luxury, the sleek design, the impeccably dressed staff, all screamed something more than just a standard cruise. The ship felt too high-end, too exclusive. Confused, she double-checked her ticket. That's when she realized she had boarded the wrong ship. Her stomach dropped as she tried to make her way back to the correct vessel, but a sharp voice interrupted her. "Miss, is everything all right?" Maya turned, her heart racing as she was faced with a man who seemed to emanate authority. His presence was almost overwhelming, his tailored suit sharp against the backdrop of the luxurious yacht. Luca Moretti, the billionaire owner of this private cruise, was standing in front of her. Luca's sharp eyes seemed to pierce through her, his gaze assessing. "It seems you've mistakenly boarded my ship," he said, his voice smooth but firm. Maya stammered, trying to explain her confusion, but Luca wasn't fazed. He stepped closer, the distance between them closing as if he hadn't noticed the shock on her face. "I don't usually entertain surprises, Luca continued, studying her intently. "But you're already here. Why don't you stay for a while? I'll make sure you're treated like a guest." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. She was a travel blogger, yes, but she was also acutely aware of how out of place she was in a world of wealth and luxury. She could have walked away. She could have explained the mistake and left. But something about Luca's gaze, his calm confidence, made her pause. I really shouldn't," Maya began. But Luca wasn't giving her a chance to protest. "Stay for a day," he offered, almost gently, the invitation laced with an unspoken curiosity. A mistake like this deserves at least a dinner. Her mind raced. Everything in her screamed that she didn't belong here, but something else, a strange pull, whispered that she should stay. And that's when everything began to change. The first few days aboard the luxurious yacht passed in a blur for Maya. She was constantly in awe of the sheer extravagance around her. The golden sun reflected off the crystal-clear waters of the Mediterranean. The crew seemed to anticipate every need before it even crossed her mind, and the cuisine, exquisite beyond words, was served in an opulent dining room where she sat in silence, surrounded by guests who seemed a world apart from her. Luca, as distant and enigmatic as ever, had barely spoken to her outside of their first encounter. Yet his presence lingered. He always seemed to appear at the most unexpected times, always with that cool, commanding demeanor. And whenever their eyes met, a subtle tension pulsed between them, one that Maya couldn't ignore. It wasn't until they reached a small island off the coast of Italy that things began to change. Luca invited her to join him for a private excursion, a boat ride along the rocky coastline of the island, just the two of them. Maya hesitated, unsure of what to expect. She had been told that Luca preferred solitude, that he never allowed personal interactions to interfere with his business. But here he was, offering her the chance to explore the island with him, and she couldn't bring herself to refuse. The boat ride started off quietly. The wind played with Maya's hair, and the rhythmic sound of the waves was soothing. Luca, as usual, was quiet, his eyes focused on the horizon. Maya wanted to ask questions, to break the silence, but something held her back. She knew Luca wasn't the type to easily open up. After a long stretch of silence, Maya finally spoke, her voice steady, but laced with uncertainty. "You're not like the other guests, are you?" Luca turned his head, his gaze meeting hers. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean—" Maya hesitated, gathering her thoughts. Everyone here is so eager to entertain themselves, to escape from their own lives. "But you—" She trailed off, unsure of how to finish. "I'm not running from anything," Luca said quietly, his eyes hardening slightly. "I've built everything you see here, but in doing so, I've lost more than I can afford to lose." Maya felt an unfamiliar weight in his words. There was something there, something vulnerable, buried beneath the layers of wealth and success that surrounded him. She pressed on, curious to learn more. "Is that why you're always so distant? Always keeping everyone at arm's length?" Maya asked. "Because you've lost things that matter?" Luca's jaw clenched and his eyes darkened. "It's not as simple as that," he replied, his tone colder now. "Sometimes, the things you lose are the things you never knew you needed." "I've learned that the hard way." Maya stared at him, searching his face for something more. But before she could press further, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it quickly, his expression changing to something unreadable. "I have to take this," Luca said abruptly, standing up and walking to the side of the boat to answer the call. Maya watched him, her curiosity growing. What had happened to him? What was he hiding? As he spoke in a low voice, she felt a pang of loneliness. Here she was, sitting with a man whose life seemed to be everything she wanted, yet it was clear he was carrying something heavy, something he wasn't ready to share. When the call ended, Luca returned to his seat, his face hard once more. "We should head back," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's time for the next part of the trip." The tension between them was palpable, as if the walls that had been broken down were now being rebuilt in an instant. Maya didn't understand. She wanted to know more, to peel back the layers of the man who seemed so unreachable. But the biggest revelation was still to come. The days that followed were a mix of emotions for Maya: confusion, fascination, and a strange sense of being caught between two worlds. As much as she tried to focus on her blog, capturing every moment of the Mediterranean islands, her thoughts kept drifting back to Luca. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized how little she truly knew about him, despite the connection that had been building between them. It wasn't until one afternoon, as the yacht sailed toward a secluded cove off the coast of Sicily, that Luca finally opened up. Maya had spent the day exploring the island with some of the other guests, taking photos and enjoying the local culture. When she returned to the yacht, tired but content, she found Luca standing alone on the deck, staring out over the water. There was an air of melancholy about him, a quiet sadness that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Unable to resist, Maya approached, her footsteps soft on the deck. "Is this your favorite place?" she asked, her voice breaking the silence. Luca turned to her, his eyes soft but guarded. "It used to be," he said quietly, his gaze distant. "I came here with my family once. My father loved this place. Said it was the most beautiful spot on earth." Maya hesitated, sensing there was more to the story. "What happened?" she asked gently. Luca's expression hardened slightly, the walls he had carefully built around his emotions rising again. But after a long moment, he let out a deep sigh and sat down on one of the lounge chairs, motioning for her to join him. "My father died when I was young," Luca began, his voice low, as though speaking the words aloud made them more real. "And my mother. She wasn't ready to be a mother to me. She was focused on her own grief. I raised myself, learned how to navigate a world of wealth and expectations without ever really understanding love, family, or sacrifice." Maya listened carefully, the pieces of his guarded personality falling into place. He wasn't the cold, distant man he appeared to be. He was someone who had been abandoned, someone who had learned to build his empire with the emotional tools he had, tools that were jagged and incomplete. "But there's more," Luca continued, his voice catching slightly. "I had children, a son and a daughter. When I started this company, I was so consumed with success, with proving myself, that I wasn't there for them. I missed their childhood, their first steps, all of it. And when I tried to reconnect, it was too late." Maya's heart ached as Luca's pain became more real with every word. She could see it now, the weight of the sacrifices he had made. The man who seemed to have everything had lost the most important thing, his family. Luca's eyes met hers, filled with a deep regret. "I tried to be a good father," he whispered, as if asking for some kind of absolution. "But I couldn't be. Not when it mattered." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had always been so focused on her own struggles, on making her way in the world, that she never stopped to think about the sacrifices others made for success. The idea that Luca, a man who had everything, wealth, power, influence, felt the weight of those missed years, those broken bonds, hit her harder than she expected. "You can't go back," Maya said softly, her voice filled with empathy. but maybe you can still fix things. It's not too late." Luca turned away, his gaze once again drifting to the horizon. "I don't know how to fix it," he confessed, his voice cracking. "I don't even know where to begin." Maya sat beside him, her mind racing. For the first time, she saw Luca not as the distant billionaire, but as someone who was just as human as she was, flawed, hurt, and searching for a way to make things right. As she looked at him, a thought crossed her mind. What if the reason she had been so focused on her own struggles was because she was too afraid to face her own sacrifices, too afraid to confront the relationships she had lost? She had been running from her past, too. Maybe it was time to stop running. And that was when he realized what truly mattered. Maya found herself wrestling with emotions she hadn't anticipated. After Luca's revelation about his family, everything between them shifted. There was a new understanding, a shared vulnerability that neither of them had expected, yet both had longed for. But the more she spent time with him, the more she realized how much she had locked away too, how much she had sacrificed for her family, for her career, and for a life she thought she could handle alone. Every day on the yacht, surrounded by the stunning Mediterranean views, Maya found herself opening up more. She started telling Luca about her past, how she had been her mother's caregiver since she was a teenager, how every opportunity had felt like a second chance to escape, to build a life for herself. She told him about Ben, about the man she once loved and lost, and how, in the end, she had closed off her heart, afraid of being hurt again. Luca, too, began to share. Slowly, cautiously at first, but as the days passed, he revealed pieces of himself that Maya hadn't seen before, the man who had built an empire but had never truly lived, the father who missed his children's most precious moments, the son who wished he could go back in time and make things right with his parents. As their connection deepened, Maya found herself facing the most difficult thing she had ever done, letting go of the walls she had spent years building around her heart. It wasn't easy. It was messy, uncomfortable, and full of doubts. She had been so afraid of needing someone, of relying on anyone, that trusting Luca felt like a betrayal of everything she had fought for. But it was impossible to deny the pull between them. The way Luca saw her, really saw her, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. He wasn't just interested in her success or her blog. He wanted to know her, all of her. One afternoon, after a quiet walk along the deck, Luca took her hand in his. The touch was soft, tentative, as if they were both afraid of what it might mean. But when their fingers intertwined, there was no hesitation, no second guessing. Just the quiet understanding that, for the first time, they both wanted this. Wanted each other. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," Luca said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of sincerity. "Someone who gets it, who understands that there's more to life than success." Maya looked at him, her heart full of emotion. She knew this wasn't the life she had planned for herself, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if the life she'd imagined was the one she wanted. The Mediterranean was beautiful, but it wasn't the place that had captured her heart. It was the man beside her. "I don't know if I can ever stop being who I've been," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I know that this," she gestured to the space between them, "this is something I want to explore." Luca's face softened, and he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We'll figure it out, together." Maya smiled, her chest tight with the weight of the decision she knew she had to make. She had spent so much of her life trying to build something that would finally prove she was enough. But in that moment, with Luca's gaze on her, She realized that maybe she didn't need to prove anything anymore. Maybe it was okay to take a chance, to believe in something new. But the hardest test was still ahead. The following evening, the yacht docked in Cassis, a charming French seaside town that glowed under the golden hue of the setting sun. Maya stood at the edge of the deck, gazing at the calm waves crashing against the shore. The soft sound of water was calming, but her mind was anything but peaceful. For the first time in a long while, she felt torn between two worlds. Her connection with Luca was undeniable, but there were still so many things left unsaid. Luca had been distant over the last few days, retreating into himself after their quiet moments together. Maya could sense something was brewing beneath the surface, a storm of emotions he was refusing to confront. The sound of footsteps behind her broke her from her thoughts. She turned, her heart skipping a beat when she saw Luca walking toward her. There was a heaviness in his step, his face etched with something unfamiliar. Regret, maybe. But his eyes, those familiar blue eyes, were filled with something far more intense. "Maya," he began, his voice quieter than usual, like he was struggling with each word. "There's something I need to tell you." Her stomach twisted, unease settling in her chest. She hadn't seen him this vulnerable before. "What is it, Luca?" He stopped a few feet away from her, his gaze dropping to the deck as he seemed to search for the right words. "I've been avoiding this for a while," he said, running a hand through his dark hair. "I've been hiding from it. But I can't anymore. I need to be honest with you." Maya's pulse quickened. The air felt heavy around them. Honest about what? Luca looked up, his eyes meeting hers. A depth of emotion behind them that Maya hadn't seen before. "I've tried to reach my children," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I've been trying to make up for the time I lost with them. But my pride, my fear, they've kept me from doing what I knew was right. What I should have done a long time ago." Maya's heart clenched, the words taking her by surprise. She had known Luca had lost something, but hearing it so plainly from him shattered the image she'd built in her mind of the self-assured businessman. "You've failed them," she said softly, her throat tight. It wasn't an accusation. It was the truth. "I know," Luca whispered, his voice thick with guilt. "I've failed them. I don't know how to fix what's broken, Maya, but I have to try. They're my children. I was too focused on building this empire, and I lost everything that mattered. I thought I could hide behind success. But now, all I see is the emptiness it's left behind." Maya stepped closer, her heart aching for him, for the man who had built a life from nothing, only to realize too late what truly mattered. She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against his. "Luca." He looked at her with desperate eyes. "I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if they'll ever forgive me. But I won't give up on them. I can't, and I can't lose you, too." Maya felt her own tears begin to well up. She knew what he was saying. He was trying to salvage what he could. But she wasn't sure she could be the person to hold him together. They were from different worlds, and no matter how much she wanted to stay, she knew his past would always be a shadow that loomed between them. "I don't want to lose you, Luca," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But you have your family to heal. I have my own journey to follow." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "You don't have to carry this alone. Not anymore." They stood in the silence, the weight of their unspoken words hanging between them, their hearts both breaking for reasons they couldn't fully explain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were filled with quiet healing. Maya, still grappling with her own fears, found herself opening up more than she ever had before. Luca, in turn, started taking the necessary steps to reach out to his children, pushing aside his pride and embracing the vulnerability he had kept hidden for so long. He called them, one by one, apologizing, offering the truth he had buried for years. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but Maya stood by his side, supporting him in every way she could. Together, they built a bridge between their two worlds, one founded on honesty and trust. One evening, as they sat on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky, Luca took Maya's hand in his. "I never thought I'd have a second chance at love," he whispered, his voice filled with both gratitude and hope. "But with you, I think I might." Maya squeezed his hand, her heart lighter than it had ever been. "We both have second chances now," she said, her voice steady. "And this time, we won't let fear stand in our way." The future was still uncertain, but in that moment, they knew one thing for sure: they were ready to face it together.